Thank you very much for coming. This is tutorial 14 in our program, jointly sponsored by the Wharton San Francisco and Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati. We are delighted to have all of you here. Today's talk is going to be on marketing, and we're very pleased to have Chris Roon, who's principal at Firebrick Consulting, joining us today. A couple of housekeeping things before we get going. Our next presentation is pretty quickly. It's going to be January 6th, first week after the new year. And it's going to be on patent strategies. One of our patent partners here from Wilson Sonsini will be speaking on how to make sure your patent strategy helps you get funding rather than hindering it. So we'd invite you all to come. It will be here at Wilson Sonsini again, not up in San Francisco, and it will be the normal time. So hold on, that's not the 6th, that's the one after that. No. The 6th? 6th is in Palo Alto, because you're still moving then. The one after that will be at the Hills Brothers Coffee? Okay. All right, so. Okay, and just to remind you, you can find previous tutorials online by going to this URL. You can also just go to YouTube and put in Wharton, and generally it'll come up. And then also after today's session, we'll try to do like we've done in a couple of previous ones where we have some follow-up opportunities, but this time it won't be just lawyer stuff. Chris has graciously agreed to stick around a little and answer questions for another 45 minutes or so. What we'll do is we'll take about a 5-minute break here, and then we'll just start up again in a sort of a panel session. So with all that, I'll now introduce Chris. Chris is, as I said, from Firebrick Consulting. He has over 20 years experience in the high technology industry, and his firm specializes in breakaway strategies in unblocking critical problems to build substantial market value. So Firebrick is at the vanguard of innovative positioning and sales enablement strategies, and has advised over 100 companies, and we thought it would be just a fantastic thing to have Chris come and speak, much more interesting than having lawyers speak to you, which we've done a lot so far. So Chris, let me turn it over to you. Here's the clicker.
Thank you, Herb.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you all. It's a topic I'm pretty passionate about. I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a founder, I've been a product manager, and what's really troubling to me is that great companies often don't get the escape velocity. We read about it all the time where companies with superior products get sold for assets, or companies that started after the original player wind up acquiring, as recently as yesterday with SurveyMonkey, wound up acquiring Market Tools. Market Tools was the early player, and the follower beat them to market. It's often, most often, not about the product or the strategy. It's about how they engage the market. Hence, our topic today is about the art of getting the most revenue. Now, I know it's early, but it's much more enjoyable for us all if we can engage. So ask questions. I'm going to start with an exercise. But let's for a moment assume this is the business you're in. You make a full line of automotive brakes. You're all drivers. You understand the commodity. So talk to me. You're the leader. You're the innovator. You're the dominant player. How would you position your offering? Automotive brakes. Got it? So tell me, what business are you in? What's your business?
Saving lives.
Ah, saving lives. I'll repeat some of the answers for the online audience, and again, welcome and thank you for the online audience. So, what does your product do? What does a product do? Takes a moving vehicle and helps it stop. Why do you want to stop? Why do people buy them? Why do people buy brakes? Safety. Safety. Driver safety. Yours are more expensive. How do you justify the premium? Why is it worthwhile paying a premium for your brakes? You're the innovator. You're the leader. But why more? It's a commodity, isn't it? Give me a reason. Why would you pay a premium for this brake line?
Quality control.
Quality control. So, would you pay twice the price for twice the stopping power? If X is sufficient to stop the vehicle and yours stops it twice as fast, will you pay twice the premium?
How much is your life worth?
How much is your life worth? So here's the point of the exercise that I want to go to. People talk about capabilities. People talk about stopping power. That's what the product does. Capabilities. Now, let me do a little jujitsu here. Because of my product, you go into the corner faster. You're more comfortable with the unseen obstacle. You drive faster. You enjoy the drive, the performance of the vehicle. You arrive sooner. Look what I've done. I've shifted your point of view. I'm not talking about the 20,000 foot-pounds of stopping power delivered in milliseconds. I'm not talking about it stops safely or comfortably, although that's valuable. I'm not talking about the longest wearing or the lowest maintenance and the great value. I moved from the product to talk about the buyer. I want you to know that you can go into these blind curves and not be concerned. You arrive faster. You enjoy the joy of the drive. Feel the car's performance, enjoy the driving experience. I went to your aspirations. I went to you. I went to the enjoyment. So what is great positioning? It tells a memorable story. Brakes, they help me slow down. No, they help you go faster. They motivate buying. They go to your aspirations. They command a premium performance, a premium revenue. Improve your buyer perception. Good positioning can do that. That's our topic today. Now, today's agenda, I want to talk and explain about positioning. Positioning is marketing. We'll separate that from selling. Positioning is the top of the pyramid. It's how we tell our story to reach the highest level buyer, to collapse the sales cycle. And in the internet era, people don't wind up on the car lot saying, show me what you got on your fleet. They do all the research online. They talk to their peers. So marketing is the process of talking to buyers you haven't met. It's easier for me to look somebody in the eye and see if they're with me and they're paying attention and the nonverbal cues. That's selling. Marketing is talking to people you haven't met. We got to segment down to that set of buyers who are going to purchase this year, because good positioning will last a year. And we have to make the messaging and the positioning resonate so much that they feel their office has been bugged. You describe the problem, you describe my aspirations, you describe it so well the hair on the back of my head stands up because it's like a Stephen King novel. You've been walking in my shoes. And that's great marketing, and that's what positioning does. We'll talk about the challenge. It's hard. Now, I joined the firm 5 years ago. I was a successful CMO, and I've been a founder and a product manager, and I love creating markets. That gives me a lot of satisfaction. But the problem is, how do I communicate what it can do, the problem it solves, and why it's different than the alternative? How do I create differentiation? How do I teach somebody how to buy one? You remember when you go into that audio store and you're looking for a 1080p and you know that the rep knows you don't know jack about flat panels, and he's going to guide you to the one that has the biggest spiff? That's what every one of your buyers go through. I don't know how to buy this. I'm not the audiophile. I just want a nice product. And we're susceptible to the selling process. How do you teach people how to buy? How do you teach people the value of what you can do? How do you let them visualize their life on the other side of the purchase that commands a premium? You can go faster. You can arrive sooner. You don't worry about the unseen obstacle around the corner. You can enjoy the G's. That's what we have to do, is transform people. How do we do it? A new positioning model, 9 rules. I'll show you. Before we got started here, I asked several people, what business are you in? And they tell me what the product does. When I ask them what problem does it solve, that's where we get to the essence. Buyers don't wake up in the morning saying, hey, I need more software. You know, what I really need are more servers or more of this. No, they wake up trying to solve a business problem, trying to drive a business outcome, looking for income statement effects. And you have to intersect that. Most of the examples I'm going to use today are about B2B. We have many clients who are B2B2C. It's a positioning conversation, not about branding. Consumer side is far more related to branding, but I'll happy afterwards to take more of those questions. So what is positioning? You know, positioning is in the mind of the prospect. It's how you differentiate your solution. It cuts through the clutter. It focuses on the perceptions of the prospect. Now, the problem is rarely the right strategy. Most companies understand where the puck's going to be. They've done enough research. They know what product, what features, what function. They know how the market's evolving. And they spend, as the P&L owner, the 12 or 14 points of revenue on R&D, and they put the puck where the players are going to arrive. And it drives them nuts when people are buying, and they're buying an inferior product. They're buying an outdated product. So rarely is it the strategy, it's how do we get to the point of revenue? How do we get into the mind and the hearts of the people who are going to buy in the next 12 months? And how do we do it better than anybody else? It often takes too long, and you don't maximize revenue opportunity. We tend to target at Firebrick about 200 million and up general managers, any P&L owner with a 200 million and up business unit. They're the ones who are spending that money on R&D. And they tell us that 62% of the time, my first year target revenues come in late, come in low. We miss that 62% of the time on average from 8 to 10%. Now sure, I covered it with some of the old product line, but when I enter a new market, enter a new industry, bring a new product to market, 62% of the time we don't hit first year target revenue. And that leakage is funding and fueling the competition. And if I compound that over 2 or 3 years, I don't get a bigger job, I don't get more product line, I don't snuff out the competition, I endure sales cycles which are longer, we're giving up more discounting. So the path between the strategy and the point to revenue is where most companies struggle. They struggle because the sales reps talk about it the old way. They talk to the old buyer. They talk to the perception of what the company is seen for as opposed to what the prospects are buying on. So if we can connect or reconnect the strategy to the revenue, we'll get it right. It's rarely about the business model, although those are shifting from what was SaaS to now cloud or in the product line. It's rarely about the channel. We can figure out what's the best way to get to market, but it's how you make it work. The sales and marketing. We like to talk about the sales, doesn't talk to marketing and why there's always a bridge, or why there's a disconnect and we need to bridge, but the P&L owner has to pay for both. How does marketing serve the customer sales? How does sales engage the target market? That's the go-to-market and the connection. So why is it so hard? Well, we like to say it's going from I to Y. I have investments in my product, in my channel, I have initiatives, I have launches, I have introductions, and then we got to get all the way to the customer to yes, I to Y. But to get there, we go through this status quo barrier. First, I have attention deficit economy in the Twitter era. We also have the risk aversion. Oh man, I could lose my job. I don't want to do that. Change burden. Boy, this looks like another one of those really hard IT projects. I died on that hill once before. Or this, let's just wait. The entrenched alternative. We have a strategic provider. It's not the best, but it's good enough. I won't lose my job. So getting from I to Y is getting through this status quo barrier. And particularly earlier stage companies, you don't have the war chest and you don't have the brand. That's positioning. Now, it used to be that we had, in the perpetual license world for software, releases 12, 18 months at a time. And if we got it wrong, this strategy to revenue disconnect, we could find out, why are you discounting? Why are we losing to that competitor? And we go back and retrain the sales force and we can remediate. Unfortunately, now we're in an agile development world where we're doing releases every 2 weeks or sooner. While you used to have occasional acquisitions, occasionally one of our customers would merge, occasionally our competitors would merge. That's all coming in a much more compressed time frame. So the product life cycle or the strategy life cycle, the opportunity for your strategy to take hold and for you to remediate if it's not quite right, in those compressions, we have to get better at doing the positioning right at the beginning. So whereas we used to be able to go back and interview the sales force, find out what we got wrong and fix it, you got to get it right now. That 8 to 10% loss in that leakage is going to kill you. Positioning now becomes a strategic competence of the corporation. Now, we'll go through some tools and some ways to talk about it so I can help you. Please ask questions as I go through. I can tell, but it's much more enjoyable to engage. I'll stay here afterwards and we can do more of that. So, first off, how do you recognize the symptoms that you got a problem? Well, if it takes you 30 slides to tell the story and it needs an analyst to decode it for your buyers, you got a problem. It's called positioning. If your sales cycles are long and you have death by maybe we'll buy now, maybe not. It's interesting, but it's not urgent. Or worse, column fodder, A versus B, we're trying to evaluate. You haven't differentiated. You haven't made it clear. Blah, 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 you all sound alike. You ask 3 of your officers, what business are you in? If you get different answers, problem starts at the top. You're not considered a player. You're an entrant. You're an innovator, but you're not a player. Lots of money on campaigns or PR. Your salespeople are chasing everything, but not the right things. We're in lots of deals, but our capture ratios are low. You don't have a point of view. So with that, let me introduce a new positioning model. I introduced this a moment ago with the brakes, but stop talking about the product, get into the buyer's mind. I'll try to reference some of the jujitsu that I'm doing, but I didn't start and tell you about Firebrick. I didn't tell you about Chris Roon, because you don't care about me. You didn't come here because it's Firebrick, and you probably knew nothing about me. You came for the problem, positioning. Start there. Get to the buyer's problem. Explain the problem and your relevance and your understanding. And then they're going to want to know, who are you? How is your company? Are they going to be around? I don't go onto the Ford lot, say, what do you got? I figured out I'm looking for a car in your fleet. It's this one, and I arrive with all my research and knowledge, and I want to look at that car. Now I'm interested in who is the brand, how do you do your service, what's the price point. That's how people buy today. So go from product to buyer. I'll give you examples as we go along. Apologies to anybody who is associated with these firms, and I'm trying to do it at a summary level to do a teaching point and not to attack or in any way degrade. These are prior clients. But we have a release 1.5 product information system, which is a SaaS solution, geotagged XML based. Whew. Cool. Now, this company is in the catalog business, and they help retailers do a great job of execution. And they have the biggest possible catalog, and they help retailers engage their market more successfully. It is a buyer problem called global brand execution, synchronizing the flow of product information. That's what their buyer wakes up worrying about and trying to solve for income statement effects. This is how the company wants to talk about their impressive IP. Here is a company, Sequoia-backed, MarkLogic. Release 5.0, big data analytics, point-in-time recovery, Hadoop, tiered storage. God, need some of that. Instead, it's not about the database. It's not about transactions like Oracle. It's about unstructured data and the vast volume that's coming through. And how can you possibly run your business without all the data? The emergence of big data applications that didn't exist before. The 2-second advantage. That is a buyer problem. That is what I aspire to solve. User virtualization. What's that? Well, it's a really cool company, and you know, the founders built it up, and the very first money they took was $70 million from Goldman Sachs because Goldman doesn't think they're ever going to get to the IPO door. The company is absence. And they extract and abstract the user persona from the device so that wherever device, laptop, desktop, phone, your bookmarks, your favorite fonts, your roles and responsibilities and your user sign-on are all there for you, optimized for that device. And by the way, when that device, the iPad, is in China, we give you a slightly different security protocol. When you're inside our firewall on the desktop, we allow you to see and do more. We control all that, and we solve the last mile for you. They were talking about Win 7, desktop migration, and Citrix desktops. But the real problem on the buyer, because they were selling down to the endpoint manager in IT, that person doesn't have a big budget, but they have a big SLA. If your laptop is lost or destroyed, get me back up and running fast. And they have to worry about all the security, and they have to worry about all the layers of the patches, and they have to worry about millions of configurations. Well, it turns out that user complexity is the problem. And IT is an overhead operation, so we keep constraining it, but we want you to do more with less. So for the CIO, the empowered executive, who they weren't talking to, the problem is user complexity. They didn't think about user complexity. They thought about servicing the user, but the complexity. And people got all these iPads and brought them into the corporation, and we didn't even issue them. And now here they are using devices we don't even control inside of our environment. So user complexity is the issue. IT as a service is what we're trying to get, the value. And the last mile, user adoption, is stopping me. That's the problem we solve at AppSense. So move from the product-centric, move to the buyer point of view. I'll give you 9 rules. They're roughly broken into who are you telling it to, what are you telling them, and how do you tell it. And I'll give you some examples as we go along. And I invite any of you to send me an email, and I have some cards up here and the folks online. I'll be happy to take a look at your story. I'll be happy to evaluate it against these 9 rules. It's easy for me to look at one because I have the pattern recognition, because we do 12 to 15 of these projects a year. And sadly, the cancer we cure, a lot of people have the symptoms. Talking about the capability, not putting the buyer point of view up front, not setting the buying criteria, not having a point of view. Happy to look at those. Rule 1, Global 500. Can't tell you how many times we go into companies and said, yep, what's your market? Ooh, SMB. CIOs in the Global 500. Well, that's a demographic. It's not a market. And if you tell me I'm trying to settle the Global 500, well, first off, good positioning in a really dynamic market will last 3 quarters, maybe 4. In a really staged, slow growth change market, maybe 18 months. But think about 12 months as a time frame, because that happens to align with your business plan. How many people do I have to close in the next 12 months to make my number? So a huge portion aren't going to buy in the next 12 months. That's not your target market. You want to talk about the people who have urgency to buy in the next 12 months. And from that, some of those are never going to buy from a company like yours. You're too small, you're too young, you don't know enough about my industry. So we have to target a set of buyers who are going to purchase in the next 12 months, who are willing to consider your company. And to do that, we have to bear down to understand their buying motivations and their funded initiatives. So if we can make the hair stand up on the back of their neck when they hit your website, it's you've described the problem in that demographic and that market. And the way we do that, we say, who is your Mary? Now in our practice, we say, okay, Mary is an example of a company in Minneapolis. 2 years ago, they were growing faster in retail than any other women's clothier during the recession. How come? Wall Street went up, interviewed the founders, and they said, what are you doing more? How are you doing this? And they said, well, every decision we make in the company, we ask ourselves, what would Mary think? Mary is their buyer. Mary is 36 years old. Mary has 2.2 kids. Mary has $40,000 of disposable income. Mary can't afford fashion forward but wants to be fashion right. She's looking for value and economy, clothes that fit and are comfortable. They know they're Mary. Do you know you're Mary? You've got to get in the mind and the heart of your buyer. And again, the buyer you didn't meet. Now, to do that, we often talk about personas. This is something that certainly the consumer industry has learned a lot about. B2B have been slow to pick up focus group research and understanding buyer motivations. But in the web world now, with web applications, we worry about who's on the other side of that click stream and how do I motivate their behavior. And because we're now SaaS and cloud-based, we can look at aggregated data and we can get a pretty good idea of what's there. In our practice, we ask people to tell us, who is that archetype buyer? What deal did you sell last quarter that really represents the pinnacle of the buyers you're trying to get? And sometimes we have to build a composite of these personas. But it's easy if you go back into your company and saying, who are they? Put a name on it. That's Harry. And Harry is a change agent who comes from this part of the organization, been in the job this long, has this much span of control. And we'll ask them, what was the project? What was the funded initiative? What was the win for Harry? Who did they consider? Why did you win? What were the metrics of success? From that information, we may build a persona of our target buyer. You may have two different business use cases for your product. You may have two different personas. But it's important to understand who you want. I'll give you another example, though. Pay very close attention to who you don't want. Dell Computer made a decision that they never wanted to sell somebody their first computer. The first computer buyer doesn't spend as much on memory, won't put in the highest quality components, doesn't give us the most margin. Dell Computer consciously decided we don't want that, and they designed their web experience to be hostile to a first-time computer buyer. And they drove those first-time computer buyers, the grandmothers and others who couldn't wait to try a keyboard, to Gateway, who printed cow spots on their boxes and wanted to be warm and friendly to the first-time buyer, and completely swamped them with call center volume. How do I plug it in? If I turn it off, am I going to lose my data? Dell wanted people to come back after they were a first-time user because then they paid a premium. So when you're looking at who do you want to sell to, also think about who don't you want to sell to. In selling, it's so expensive. We do complex sales, on average $250,000 compensation on quota, plus $10,000 a month per rep for their benefits and their IT, and then add a sales consultant underneath that, and they're $500,000 of cost per year for that sales team. We better get it right. Now, when I'm taking that channel, who do they sell to? I want to lose early. I don't want to lose late. I don't want to lose to no decision. Get me out of the deal early. So make conscious decision about who you don't want to sell to and target the scenarios that you do, and the scenarios are buyers. Remember, corporations don't buy, people buy. What's in it for me? How does it advance my career? How do I get out of this job? Let me think about what's on the other side. I will tell you that your buyer may change over time. So on an axis X, maybe right now in the next 12 months we're worried about Mary, and we've added more functionality and more features. Now I have more modules. Now I have a suite. I've added more components. I've added more technology. I now have a platform. I've earned the right to go to a different buyer. Now that's me outbound. But sometimes, the environment has changed. I used to be selling online resumes. It was a war for talent. How do I get more people applying because I can't get the engineers? Now it's a recession. Now I got to keep the talent I have. It's a very different conversation. So maybe your buyer is different. Success factors is a wonderful one. So here's a corporation that did one thing well, the focal review. Give me my annual performance review. They started by doing that online, as SaaS-based, now we'll say cloud, but you know, oh boy, hate that process. Once a year, my boss tells me what he can remember possibly over the last 12 months. And you know what, that batch interval is too long, 12 months. I've had 2 bosses in the year, but I got 1 review. And we've changed strategy twice, but you know, I'm not aligned, and God, I hate it. Success Factors was selling to HR. Here's a way to take what everybody hates, the annual performance review, do it online, do it faster, do it easier. Everybody can look at it. You change bosses, they can find it. It's not in a file cabinet, it's online. But HR is the A in F&A. They have no power, they're an overhead operation. They don't have a seat at the table on the operating committee, so you can't charge as much as you'd like. The problem they solved was the focal review, and then they thought, wait a minute. We have individuals, Darren now, who are trying to run the business. They're a P&L owner. They're the general manager. They're the ones who are getting paid the most on equity. How do they keep their team in alignment? How do I get to a bigger corporation? I've got to get through multiple layers. How do you communicate as a general manager your objectives, your strategy, and your goals 3 levels down to people you don't meet but twice a year when you visit the factory? That's what we do at Success Factors. You can now do reviews 3, 4, 5 times a year. You can catalog the individual skills and components, and you as a general manager can move people to the changing strategy faster. I'm talking to a P&L owner. I have the same product line, but now they have bigger budget, and I'm talking to global corporations. And then, oh my God, here's SAP trying to stay relevant in a new world, having a perpetual sales model, and I had this ankle biter out in Pleasanton called Workday, Dave Duffield, ex-PeopleSoft, coming out with an in-memory database that's going ahead and taking share, and they're taking clients away from SAP with an HR system. Or I've got Mark Benioff up in San Francisco with the I Don't Do Software, capturing the imagination of the marketer on the cloud, and I'm SAP. Their buyer last week for $3+ billion was SAP, who needed to compete against an ankle biter, Workday, and an incumbent, Salesforce. And Lars, a tough-minded, clairvoyant Dane, can talk about a cloud-based strategy that motivates general managers for higher performance. And SAP had to have it and paid 8 times forward revenue. Your buyer can change, your positioning can change. I need you to own a problem. Aligning people to performance, that's what we do at Success Factors. Change strategies more frequently. Get people to operate to the new strategy. It's not about just doing the performance review. That's the task. So we talked about it. Here's one, Riverbed. We kicked off our workshop. We bring the team together. We get 6, 8, 10 people who know the product, know the market, know the buyer in the room, and for a day in a workshop, we pull the information out. That's what we do at Firebrick. We know how to package it. They got to tell us what's so impressive about their IP. Riverbed, $180 million company, CEO's in the room. His steam is coming out of his ears. The night before, he had given his earnings and performance on the quarterly review online of a publicly traded company, and he spent 20 extra minutes after the call one-on-one with Goldman Sachs about why his product was so much better and they were taking market share. They had beat their numbers. And he flops down on the desk the analyst report from Goldman Sachs, and it says, Riverbed beats expectations by Cisco. And we asked him, what's going on? He said, 72% of my customers buy something else first. It's killing me. WAN acceleration, wide area network, move stuff through the pipe faster. They were superior to anybody else in it. But Goldman says, you know, it's networks. Cisco's going to own this space. They have a product right now. If it's not so great now, it'll get better over time. Riverbed's doing a fine job creating the market. Cisco's going to own it. So the real issue is stop the bad and accelerate the good. What Riverbed does is they move metadata down the pipe instead of the whole file. We don't have to store the entire file in the remote office. And the result of that is I reduce my storage costs, I reduce the security threat, I don't have to put as much bandwidth online, and I give you a 10x multiplier effect from your IT cost. I can avoid all those expenses of more storage, more security, more risk, and more pipe. So we said to Riverbed, look, open with that line. What do you mean? 72% of my customers buy from somebody else first. I just want to know today, which one are you going to be? You're going to be the 28, you're going to be the 72. Why did you say that? Why do they buy something else? Oh, they assume that Cisco is going to be good enough. They assume that Cisco understands this market. What really happens is most of them couldn't justify the premium for the routers and switches, so the sales rep threw one more product, WAN acceleration, on the cart. They gave it away. What do you expect for nothing? They try, it doesn't scale, it doesn't give the performance, and they wind up walking away and coming back to us. So all I want to know from you today, are you going to be the 28 or are you going to be 72? Because you will become a Riverbed customer. I just want to know now before I spend the time if you're going to do it this time or next time. In their face, provocative. Why do people buy you over Cisco? We scale, we save you storage, we do the security, and we do it better than anybody else. Let me prove that. Decisioning, predictive, CRM company. Ooh, cool, what's that? It's a company here, Cordiant. They bought an analytics company in UK. They were still operating, common problem. The old guard from the company we acquired keeps talking about analytics. The company that did the acquisition talks about their CRM. Clients go to the market and they keep hearing two stories. They're not sure what the company stands for. The reality is they were an online call center that had some very powerful decisioning analytics about the next best action. They took the very first phone call for the iPhone, scaled to 3 million phone calls in 10 days. They allow call center operations to guide the customer in the engagement, sometimes to a cross-sell, upsell, sometimes to solve a bigger problem. But they can scale a call center very rapidly. It used to be, and their customers like Orange and Verizon and others, millions of customers. And when we bought into a system, when we were online, then we stayed with the service a long period of time. But now, in our attention deficit, we constantly say, am I getting the best deal? And I'll switch to something else. So we lost the customer lifetime value. And the value or the problem that we solve using Cordiant is we extend the customer lifetime value. Keep the customer bound every time they hit your call center. It's an engagement opportunity. How do we make a better experience so they come away feeling good about your company and brand? That's about decisioning. That's about predictive CRM. That's what the problem we solve. Last one I said, AppSense, user virtualization. How do I drive user complexity to near zero? That's what the IT buyer wants to worry about. User complexity is a huge cost. How do I drive it to near zero? We talked a bit about the funded initiative. The problem at Riverbed with WAN acceleration is I have an IT performance guy. I have a director level person who understands network performance. That's the person who's been buying. Well, the funded initiatives are, we just bought a new company. We're opening a new remote office. We're expanding our security investment. I need to attach to those funded initiatives. I'll take you to a metaphor of Mustangs. There's lots of opportunities to buy, and you're one of those Mustangs out there. And it used to be we worried about the ROI, the IRR, the cost to capital, meet the hurdle rate to get purchased. No. Meeting the hurdle rate brings you from the range as a Mustang into the corral. Elbows over the side of the fence looking at the horses. Which of the ones are we going to lead into the barn? We went from the wide range of a lot of Mustangs and stallions out there into here 10 we're considering. We're going to fund 3. Which are the 3 initiatives that are going to get funded this year? If you're trying, as those other 7, to get a missionary sale to get onto that list of 3, you have a long, expensive sales cycle. But if you can find one of those 3 initiatives that have already been funded, sometimes by looking at the annual report and the CEO letter, looking at what they talked about in the last earnings call, this is what's important. How does your product advance that initiative? Teach your buyer, Riverbed, the network performance engineer, how to get a piece of that budget. With that data center expansion, where's my budget? With that security requirement, where's my budget? With that merger and acquisition, what are we going to do for WAN acceleration? Don't get a budget for WAN acceleration. Take a WAN acceleration segment from a funded initiative. Have a point of view. Provocations can create revenue. Provocations allow companies to look at the problem differently. Mark Benioff, International Sign, no software. Here's a guy from Oracle who's building a CRM solution and says anti-software. Caught the heart and soul of people who bought perpetual software, didn't like having all the risk and the cost loaded on them, didn't like the fact it was a big, expensive IT project and took a long time, and said, hey, it's easy to use. It's just like buying books on Amazon. Anti-software, provocation, have a point of view. We used to use, mission statements, blah, blah, blah. It's far more interesting to use founder stories. Tell us about your heritage. Tell us about the informed point of view that created the company because you lived it day in, day out and saw the problem and took a different view from inception. That's how you're going to gain attention with a limited budget. Similarly, we talk about a corner of the room. Assuming this room is a category and a buyer comes in, what do they see? Does it look like they're all huddled together in the middle? Can I tell the difference between yours and the alternatives? The more you appear to be huddled together with the alternatives, the more likely you have long, expensive sales cycles, and the more likely there's a flight to safety, so the big brand wins. Now, if you're the big brand and you're IBM or Oracle, the last thing you want to do is allow anybody to differentiate. So you're going to claim what everybody else does. It's good enough at Cisco. Riverbed holds by Cisco. So you need to own a corner of the room and stand apart. Tell your target buyer that here's the problem we solve. We came at it with a different point of view. These are the symptoms and the requirements for the customers who buy my product. Oh, MarkLogic, big database, must be Oracle. Great for transaction data. What does it do for unstructured data? Yeah, if you don't have one of those databases for transaction data, you probably should. You should buy Oracle. But if you need to do unstructured data and you need to do it at high volume, and you need to be able to do it in ways that you can't anticipate today, it's not about a relational database. It's about big data apps. And 15 years ago when Oracle got started, they weren't thinking about it. Stand apart. Create contrast. Teach the buyer how to evaluate the contrast. Teach them the buying criteria by owning a corner of the room. Don't allow yourself to be huddled next to everybody else. A good test for this is what I call the website test. When we get invited into projects, the first thing we do is we go off and look at who they perceive to be their competitors. And no surprise, every time we look at these, you can swap out logos and it all looks the same. Look at their website, put your logo on it, does it say the same thing? That's what the buyer's going through. They're all flat panel displays. I can't tell what's 1080p versus 1080p. I can't see it. Oh, you want this one. How come? And they give you a lot of jargon, and off we go. Communicate with stories. I've tried to do that today. I've tried to emulate what I want you to do. I didn't come in and tell you about me and my company. I came in and talked about a problem. I talked to you about an informed point of view and how we look at it differently. I try to help you to understand why the heritage and the background of the founders leads you to a better place. I get you around the problem and then hopefully get you to see your way through it. Doug.
So before we get too far away from Riverbed, in the 78 and the 20, what was it, the 72 and the 28?
Yep.
What did Riverbed do to get to the 28? Is this consistent with some of the rules that you're laying out? That's a major shift, isn't it? So finish the story. What did they do?
So the question is about Riverbed and the frustration that 72% of their customers bought something else first. And the question goes to what happens when you're not the big incumbent, but you're having to compete with the big incumbent, particularly when a lot of buyers want to go to fewer suppliers and more strategic buyers. When companies took a detailed look at their product on technical merit, they won. But Cisco and others weren't competing on technical merit. So they had to change the conversation. The conversation became a business problem that would reach the CIO. They had been selling down to the network performance director. They wanted a conversation with the CIO. We did a focus group research. We went online, we recruited 3 groups of 7 CIOs, each with $1 billion+ of revenue. And we did positioning for Riverbed around a 10x multiplier. A 10x IT multiplier. What's that? And these CIOs says, it was a brand blind study, and we said, here's the value prop, which I don't believe it. That's vendor puffery. And we said, what do you mean? We can reduce storage, we can reduce bandwidth, we can improve security. I don't believe it. How could they do it? What would you need, we asked the CIOs, for that proof? I'd like to see case stories. I'd like to see companies with my volume. I'd like to see where it's from. Next slide, case stories. Companies of your size. Focus group, how do they do it? Here's how it works. Last question, who is this company? Tell me. Riverbed say, okay, tell them it's Riverbed. 20% of the CIOs we were talking to already owned Riverbed, didn't know it. They've been selling too low. The CIOs had an interesting clairvoyant comment. I send you to who you sound like. They play their voicemail back, they listen to the vendor talks about WAN acceleration, I send you to the network performance guy, get it off my desk. When you talk about my problem, CIO, about getting more for less from my IT budget, and these multiple initiatives, reduce my storage costs, reduce my security risk, give my users a higher performance SLA, those are income statement effects. Those are user benefits. They earn the right to talk to the CIO. Now, when the CIO said, if they can prove those claims, I'll buy, then it went back down to the network engineers to do the technical evaluation. But they weren't getting the at-bats. 72% bought something else without really looking at them, and it drove them nuts. The market existed. They picked the right place. They got the puck there. The players assembled, and they bought an inferior product. It's killing me. And the turnabout, by the way, 18 months after the new positioning, their valuation was up 5x. They got higher price points. They got in more deals. They had more powerful partners. Now, it isn't just because of positioning, but they couldn't have gotten there without it. It's requisite, but insufficient. Force the buyer to look at all the elements. It's not just about the WAN acceleration. It's about how we handle data and reduce storage. It's about the service level performance, but the cost of those additional pipes. It's about stopping the bad stuff, the Zillow and the YouTube that people are doing, and accelerating the good stuff, the Salesforce and the Oracle apps. Change the conversation to the income statement effects. So we have to arm everybody in the company to talk about it the same way. Go back to one of the earlier ones where, ask 3 people, we're in different things. We now want to talk to the CIO. We have a CIO conversation, but the reps on the call center are still calling in to the lower level person talking about feeds and speeds. Moving the sales channel off of the old vector onto the new vector is hard. That's where the disconnect happens. Please,
But
Julio.
it's okay to talk to both levels.
Yes. Is it okay to talk to both levels? Yes. We want to sell treetop to treetop. I want to go from executive to executive, but when you're a small company and your brand isn't known or the problem isn't so critical, The people at the top don't know, don't care. And they have professionals, EAs, who are filtering and guarding the doors. But if you talk to the director level in the language of the CIO, you'll get sponsored up. If you talk at the director level, I send you to who you sound like. Go talk to them. For 16 years, my company was branded Marketing Arts. Last year, we changed the company to Firebrick. When we did a positioning on my company, we found out, you know what? You shouldn't be selling to marketing. Because marketing people don't have as much power and control. They don't own the sales cost. What you guys do is you connect strategy to revenue. What you guys do is get to the point of revenue faster. You help the P&L owner. But every time you say, I'm calling from marketing arts, marketing arts, marketing arts, I send you to marketing. And it's a rare CMO who's willing to go, boss, you know that really strategic part of my job, positioning? I don't know how to do it. And I want to spend a lot of money to go fix it. And I didn't put it in the budget. How about it? So our price points 5 years ago were $50,000. We now sell an average project for $175,000. 5 years ago, when I joined, we sold one project, positioning. We now link it down to sales enablement and build playbooks. I sell a broader offering. I reach a higher buyer, a GM with a P&L. My average contracts are $300,000 and $320,000. Now, we did our segmentation. We'd like to sell to bigger companies. It was a downturn. Go to balance sheet power. Their crumbs are bigger. Okay, I'm not selling to the people who are early stage young entrepreneurs, which in my heart of hearts I love. I've been a founder. I want to talk to people with breathtaking IP who are trying to change the world. But from running a business, it's far nicer to go to bigger corporations who have a lot of spend and have steam coming out of their ears. And they'll spend $175,000 because it's a big problem. I'm spending $500,000 per sales team per year. $175,000 is nothing. We changed our name. We changed the conversation from positioning to strategy to the point of revenue. Riverbed changed the conversation about WAN acceleration to an IT multiplier effect. Absence changed the conversation from user virtualization to the user complexity problem. Questions? Good stories I'll answer. Let me move on quickly because we'll run out. Here's great way, 3 stories, or 3 great questions. It's not why you, it's why you now. Okay? It's not one of the 10 horses in the corral, it's one of the 3 that are going into the barn. It's a storage problem. It's a security problem. I want to attach to it. Why now? Put Riverbed in first, and all these other initiatives happen faster. How are you different? Stand apart. How will my life be different on the other side? Corporations don't buy, people buy. When I make a decision, help them jump to the other side of the implementation. Feel the G's, accelerate into the corner. Blind obstacles don't frighten you. Arrive sooner. Oh, that's me. I'll pay a lot more for that than twice the stopping power. How much insurance? Just enough. How much brakes? That and about 10%. But what will I pay for the joy of driving? A lot more. Please drop the geek speak. When I say 1080p and you walk into that room and you know the rep knows you don't know jack about a flat panel, that's what your buyers are going through. And if they have to go to Forrester or Gartner to figure out what you do, that's a pretty good indication that you guys are not helping the market understand. You're not using plain language. If it takes 20 slides for you to explain it, I'm sorry, you're missing the point. So in the beginning, we like to impress our engineering peers, and particularly in the technology industry, we like to talk about the breathtaking IP. But your engineers aren't the buyers. It's the P&L owner. So drop the geek speak and talk about it in business language. Here are some examples. It's hard for you to read. They're in the handouts. But when we were doing Mark Logic, we went to a competitor. The competitor is Vertica. And if I said it's flexibility and real-time performance for analytic workloads with improved flexibility, extensibility, and performance. Whew. So there is jargon out there, and it's meaningless. So look at the other website. If you're all using it, yeah, it feels good to be scalable and comprehensive and collaborative. And it's like oxygen. I need it, but I don't understand it. And I don't know how to differentiate on it. So get rid of the jargon and get rid of the geek speak. Plain spoken words. This is a company, Tipping Point. They originally started in internet or intrusion prevention. And you know what? They got bought by 3Com, and ultimately we did the 3Com China out story that took them into HP when HP had to roll up their sleeves and take on Cisco. But Tipping Point did internet or intrusion prevention, and they had a much broader range, but everybody remembered them as doing that one thing. So we changed the conversation. Security executives, stop threats faster, protect the highest multi-gigabyte bandwidth networks, immediate protection at critical entry, protected 24/7, drive to zero administration. I'm talking to my target buyer. I'm talking about what makes their stomach enzymes go. I'm in their heart. I'm in their heart about the problems and the aspirations they have. It's not geek speak, and it speaks to the buyer. A lot of the slides I use photographs. I encourage you all, put your buyer in the story. Positioning is best embodied in that short PowerPoint that you tell the company story. I don't expect people to always turn off the lights and turn on the projector. But if we can get to that 12 or 15 slide deck that tells the story and everybody loves it and can't wait to give it, and the sales rep goes in with this like magic in their bag and they can't wait to tell it, frankly, if they don't get a projector, they still remember the story because it's only 12 slides. And if it's intuitive and it's easy to understand, it's self-evident. Because in a complex sale, your sponsor has seen it once and he turns around and in your absence has to go and convince a committee of peers to buy it. So you don't want them to have to learn the geek speak or be expert on your product. Put buyers, benefits across the organization. Let them see what life is on the other side. Put people in your story because people buy. Speak to the buyer's aspirations. We've talked about that. Put them in plain spoken words. Power Advocate, a company you've never heard of, actually does data collection and energy intelligence for their supply chain, but they restructure costs and steer the company's performance. Yeah, that's what I do. This must be for me. I understand the energy supply chain market. I navigate through volatile markets. We do pace setting, executives, order of magnitude. That's me. Chart the future growth and profitability. This company can see all the supply chain and the commodities, and because everybody's online in their SaaS world and they see all the purchasing for 65 utilities and energy companies around the world, when the Iceland volcano happened, they were able to say 2.5%. That's going to be the price premium for shipping across the Atlantic for the next 6 weeks. And they told their clients that in 2 days. That's the 2-second advantage. That's what they do. Who's their buyer? The top-level executive who's worried about the cost of those commodities. So, how you tell your story, what you tell, they matter a lot. Happy to take questions. Thank you for your time and attention. Go ahead, Doug.
Question. Maybe this is off task and maybe it's too basic, but I'll ask it anyway. So one of the rules is know your market, know your market.
Yeah.
So what are the
Know your buyer.
Know your buyer. So what are the tools that you guys use to ascertain
Who's the buyer?
who's married?
Thank you.
Because you didn't, I mean, you kind of talked
I-
around the issue and you really didn't get to that particular building block.
Thank you. Good question, and I apologize if I didn't. So let's talk about Mary for a minute. The company, Chico, was the clothing manufacturer, and they just really concentrated, but you're in a complex sale of technology. First, the mistake. Most companies think they're talking to their market and talking to their buyer when they go and interview their customers. Wrong. The customer is going to tell you why they rationalize staying with you and what more they want, but they bought yesterday's offering for yesterday's problem. You want to talk to people who are in the sales cycle now. You want to talk to buyers who are thinking about purchase in the next 12 months. You want to do win-loss analysis about people who made the decision and bought from you, and most importantly, people who didn't, and why not. To get to marry, the way in our practice we do is we ask, which of the most strategic deals that you recently won represent the buyer you're trying to reach? What's their name? Harry. Tell me about Harry. What was the funded initiative? What was the project that led them to begin evaluating your product? What was Harry's outcome? What was the win? Who gave him the budget? What's his span of control? Who did you compete against? Why did you win? If we can get you to reveal your secret sauce, the unfair advantage that you use as that sharp knife to drop the competition, if you can tell me how Harry got to the job of selecting and what criteria he used, you're telling me what motivated Harry. And if you can tell me what was in it for Harry, what was his span of control, what were the income statement effects, I know how to message to that buyer. So get to marry by talking to prospects and people who recently purchased. And an anecdote on that. The best time to do win-loss reports is 30 days after decision and no more than 60 days. And ideally in that 30 to 40-day window, if the purchase price was $100,000 and up. Because $100,000 and up consideration takes a committee and takes some approval, and they look at multiple players. And if you call right after the decision a week later, they think you're trying to change the decision. So don't let the sales rep call, have product management call. And tell them, look, I know you bought, I don't want to change your decision, but I need to know what you saw about my product that you liked, what you didn't, and how it came down. Because as I continue to throw money in R&D and you come back in the market in 12, 18 months, I want you to find the product you didn't find today. What was it? And if you have an honest conversation with a buyer, they respect the fact that you want to know, and they also respect that you've taken a look at the market and they'll tell you. And they'll say, I couldn't tell the difference between you and the other guys, but the other guys had a relationship at the board, you didn't, so you lost. Okay, can't fix that. Your product didn't appear to scale at this and this and this. Jesus, our product does that. I have a sales training problem. When in the end, I looked at this was my biggest issue. Let the buyers tell you their criteria. 30 days after purchase, they'll still have a current memory, and they'll take your call. More than 40 days, they're into implementation, they've forgotten. Get the rep to tell you who made the decision. Parade as a product manager trying to fix the problem. Talk to the expert who just bet their career and bet the company. Ask them what were the criteria. Get close to the point of revenue. Bring that back to the conversation. Another question. Yes?
Some of your examples are targeting CIOs. Can you tell us about ones where you're targeting consumers or consumerization of IT?
Yes. So a lot of the business we do is B2B and it's technology, but the question is how do we get down to consumer and the consumer experience? Well, we recently did a positioning project for a company here called Ooyala. And Ooyala does video as a service. And for every media company, every publisher, they can serve up video in a higher, better level of engagement than anybody else anywhere in the world. And they're now selling to global brands. So it's a B2B2C, but ultimately, they worry about that consumer experience. And their buyer, the media companies, the broadcasters, Bloombergs of the world who are putting rich media out there, they worry about what engages the consumer. So we have to talk to that consumer in order to convince the buyer. What do consumers worry about? Well, I have so much time I spend engaging in media, and I, Ooyala, want to get a bigger portion of that attention. So it's not wallet share, it's time on the video, time online. I worry about my privacy and security. Who knows what I'm doing? I'm on multiple devices, which different pipe. So think to what makes the consumer engage, and it's not enable. It's not just serving the video, it's engaging the user to keep them longer. So whenever we're dealing with a consumer, we have to go to their motivations. Why does Mary buy? 2.2 kids, cash flow constrained, $40,000 disposable income. Love to be fashion forward, but not a zealot to that. Figure out what their trade-offs are. Remember, Tide versus Cheer in the Procter & Gamble world. They're both Procter & Gamble products. But one positions this, one positions that, different segments. It's an impulse buy. If it's a lower level consumer decision, I don't worry about it. It's easy, I'll throw it away. I mean, phones are disposable, I'll get another one. But a considered purchase is harder. So the issue with the consumer is what motivates them. Try not to be blasphemous here. I was a founder of an early social network company. We had amazing technology. We learned from the NSA, who learned it from Mossad, and you know what? Pre-9/11, we were tracking the headers of email, and we know who knew who and how well. And by looking at the header, the who, the from, the to, and the CC, I can tell you who you all know, and I can score it on 1 to 100. And I can do that in 10 minutes. And on average, when you connect your PC to my service, we could tell you 2,700 people you know and score them on 1 to 100. And that was 2002. And I first met Herb trying to bring that product inside of a legal firm. But I took that product into Goldman Sachs. I took that product into Xerox. I took that product into McKinsey. And you've never heard of the company called Spoke Software. And I raised $21.5 million. And I didn't make a nickel because I didn't understand the consumer. At the end, a brain-dead product like LinkedIn, where if you and I link and we're friends, you and I know each other just as strong as Herb and I, and that's not true. But the technology didn't matter. They went after comers, people who are coming up in their world and weren't worried about privacy. And they got the biggest data set. And from that biggest data set, Reid Hoffman learned how to monetize it. He didn't worry about the technology. He worried about, find me a way that recruiters can find managers and directors, because we're not going to do a retained search. Give me a way for the inside recruiter to find me so I can gain a faster promotion. LinkedIn, Facebook. What do you want? Primal need, consumer. I want fame, I want fortune, and I want sex. Well, Facebook with a .edu address, when parents send the kids to college with a laptop sitting in the classroom, they wanted the latter, and Facebook allowed me to figure out who knows Joe. That girl's cute. I don't want to ask Joe for an introduction to her, but because I know Joe, I can see her profile and I can see she's from Virginia. She likes these songs. I'm building Spoke software for people with huge and powerful networks, and I've got McKinsey and Goldman Sachs using my product, and my kids are heading off to college to get a .edu address, and they spend the whole summer on Facebook. And I look and say, they got no money. I'm not worried about it. I don't put any effort into Facebook. That market has no money. I missed it. LinkedIn, brain dead. Just give them a link, tell them it's good enough. Bigger market. Those people don't have privacy concerns. The people I was selling to had big damn privacy concerns. People would look at my product and go, wow. Inhale, whoa, where's that data going? And I could never get over whoa. 2.5 years, $21.5 million, I didn't get a nickel. Pay very close attention to your Mary. Facebook understood, I want to get laid. LinkedIn looked, I want a recruiter to call me. They deal with different markets. And Facebook has done a fine job as they evolve. If you ever look at the Charlie Rose interview with, Zuckerberg, they talk very consistently about, we help people share what they want with who they want. And that's all we do. And that's the problem they solve. How do you share what you want with who you want? Other questions? Anybody else? There was one in the back. All right, well, with that, you've been patient. Thank you for the online crowd. I'm happy to stay. Couple of comments. One, if you want to send me a LinkedIn link, I'm happy. Just remind me that it was here. I'll share my network. If you want to send me your deck and your story, let's schedule some time. It'll take me an hour to look at it. All I ask is that you assemble your team on the other hand to take the honest critique. I will tell you about the gaps, the limitations, and the missed opportunities of how you tell your story. Send me your shortest version of your deck. I want people to communicate with target buyers better. I want you to stop confusing the marketplace. I want the best product to win. I want you to understand how to do a better job of positioning. I love doing what I'm doing. I have a deep emotional commitment to people who are building markets and building product. You've done the hard part. You built the product. Let me do the thing that I know how to do, which is connect it to revenue. I'll stay as long as you want. Thank you very much.